Second Cup is brought to you by Roswell Park Comprehensive Care Center. Right here, camera two. Good morning to you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Second Cup, and I have a special guest with me this morning, Michael Gaynor, who is running on the Restore Buffalo party line to become the next Buffalo mayor. Good morning to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Katie.
Well, welcome to Second Cup. We were talking about this ahead of time. I was telling him it's a little more of a casual conversation here on Second Cup.
That's my speed. I enjoy that.
That's his speed, he says, which we love, we appreciate. And I was telling him, we have people who join us every morning. We call them Cuppies, right? They've been here from the beginning. We've been doing the show for a while. So Cuppies, any questions that you have for Mr. Gaynor, please write in. Let me know. We're going to talk a lot about the city of Buffalo today. And we're going to hit on a bunch of different topics because I do think as people are working to make this decision, we're getting so close to Election Day.
Yeah, we are.
That people want to hear what all of the candidates have to say. So I'm going to just start by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us a little bit of your background. Where are you from? What do you do? And how'd you get to this point?
Well, I think I'm the only candidate in the race that's not Buffalo born. I am celebrating my 20th year anniversary here in Buffalo on November 1st of this year. So that's pretty exciting. And I came here from Boston, but grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, where I spent the majority of my childhood on our family farm. My grandparents had a dairy farm. We had horses, and I spent a lot of time in the woods. And it was just a pretty, wholesome childhood for the most part. But I've been an educator and a teacher and a community organizer and a contractor. I run my own business, and came here honestly 20 years ago to be closer to my family. My brother has really struggled with addiction for most of his life, so I wanted to be closer to my family, to be supportive. So I didn't want to be in Erie, but I wanted to be close. And Buffalo was the first place I stopped. I flew in here from Boston, got off the plane, took the bus down Genesee Street, stopped at the then independent coffee shop Spot, picked up a copy of the Art Voice, and then spent the next 4 or 5 hours walking the streets, talking to business owners. And as soon as you would tell people that you were thinking about moving to Buffalo, people would immediately just be captivated. And they're like, take you on a tour of their neighborhood, on their store, their art gallery. And like that spirit was such a stark contrast from what I had experienced 4 years in Boston, that it just kind of captivated my attention. And then to see the potential of this place and the quality of the communities and the architecture and the community, was just what really convinced me. And I found myself on the phone calling my mom and saying, Mom, I know you're not going to believe this, because before that I'd lived all over the country, the West Coast, the East Coast, but I'm moving to Buffalo. And don't say that. I don't want to know until you're absolutely moving there, because she knows that in my younger years, I was very flighty and would change my mind every 5 minutes. So, but that's why I'm here. And it's been a pretty amazing journey. I was the founder of Buffalo Reuse. So, it's hard to believe it that we've had one mayor the whole time that I've been in Buffalo, with the exception of when Byron Brown stepped down and Mayor Scanlon has taken his place. But when I first came to town, the mayor was talking about his big plan to improve neighborhoods, which was to tear down 10,000 houses in 10 years. And that's when I just said there has to be a better way. So I brought together a team and learned from people that had tried different efforts before me. And within 3 years, we had started a robust community organization on the east side that wasn't just a store, but it was a resource, it was an educational space, it was a community effort that really brought people together to put back when it seemed like the trend was just to take things away.
Because if people don't know about Buffalo Reuse, tell them what it is.
So Buffalo Reuse was a not-for-profit organization and is that recycles building parts. And we try to get into projects, vacant properties or demolition projects before a house gets destroyed.
We're saying, like, I have these doorknobs that I can't find anywhere else. These doorknobs.
And then we operate a low-cost building supply store on the east side on Northampton Street, where members of the public can come and get things for their house. We have utilitarian kitchens, brand new kitchens that were taken out of homes in Clarence, and then we have old things that were salvaged from old homes. Doors, windows, cabinets, fixtures, bathtubs, hardware, the whole gamut. And we've used that organization and effort to do a lot of training and mentoring of young people in the community, and to basically connect the dots. You know, all of these different needs in our communities that we're kind of weaving together to a fabric that can care for our surrounding community.
And kind of reading about some of your platforms, you can see some of those similar themes coming across in some of those platforms. So I'm going to talk to you and ask you about that in a minute. But let's start by talking about, and you know, this is just one of the biggest things we talk about when we look at this mayor's race, what whoever comes into office is going to be facing when it comes to the dollars. Because we know Buffalo is in a tough fiscal situation, millions of dollars of deficit here. What's the plan when you come into office? You were on Voices with Michael Wooten earlier this week, and you were, you know, talking about how you're going to come in and really take a look. So when you take a look, what are we looking for?
Well, we're looking for, first of all, wisdom from people that already work at City Hall. The staff that are already in the trenches doing the work every day. Our firefighters, our police patrol officers, our, you know, the people that are doing the work in permits and inspections and real estate and planning. And then we got to look at our departments and our staffing and see if it's congruous with what our needs are. You know, I think my assessment is that there are some departments that are overstaffed and some that are grossly understaffed. And then we have to look at how we've allocated those resources historically. And, you know, you just look at the last 6 years and we have these massive overtime expenditures that are in excess of what we've budgeted. And that's, to me, just not sound fiscal management. And it's not holding our commissioners and our department heads accountable. So what I feel we need to do, when you go over budget and you're spending beyond what you've budgeted for a fiscal year, it's a red flag to me to start asking questions and to go to our department leaders and to our commissioners and say, what are the needs here? Why are we going over budget? Why are we spending in excess of what we have? The city doesn't have a blank check. We need to be accountable to those numbers and accountable to the taxpayers that empower us with that responsibility. So what do we have to do differently? And when I've spoken to our police officers and our police chiefs, they've said, we're burdened, we're stretched. You know, homelessness, mental illness, drug addiction, all of those social service are a drag on their ability to really address reckless behavior, nuisance crime, burglaries, robberies, car theft. All of those crimes are up. Violent crime is down, but people feel stretched. So how do we leverage state and county resources to address those social needs? Because that's their role and responsibility. We get a lot of money from the state that goes through county government for mental health and homelessness and social services. And I want to see those funds diverted to on the ground prevention and intervention with social workers that are building trust, just like our foot patrol unit that Mayor Scanlon has implemented. That brings police officers closer to the community. It builds trust between our police force and our communities, and between our police force and our small businesses. You know, I remember when I grew up, right, Mr. Rogers, right? A police officer was a person in your neighborhood, a person that you meet each day. They didn't just show up when there's something bad. They were someone that encountered and engaged with the community. And we got to get back to that.
So, and I'm hearing, okay, we're going to look at when we see overtime budgets. So we talk maybe police, fire, DPW, I'm guessing too.
DPW, exactly.
So your concept would be lean more on other resources like the county versus, when I hear overtime, do you hire more? Are we hiring more police?
And that's the question.
Okay.
The question is, does it come down to that we need more people? And that's where maybe in the public works realm, right? Maybe we need to recruit and build our capacity for second shift workers and third shift workers. All right. My father was the Department of Highways in Harbor, Pennsylvania. I spent a lot of time as a kid on a snowplow. All right. I was a contractor. I have a very systematic way of doing my job and delegating responsibilities. And I also am a small business owner that is always thinking about how to minimize my overhead and minimize my costs. So if you don't have enough second and third shift workers on DPW for plowing, then the first shift workers stay and work overtime because you can't fill those voids, then yes, you're going to have cost overruns. So what does that mean? That means we got to invest in building some of our capacity and hiring so that we can get people into those second and third shift jobs. That's city jobs are good jobs. You know, they have good benefits, they have good pay. And it's a good leveraging point to get some of our folks in our communities involved. And, you know, most people don't want to work second or third shift. but it is an entry point and an access point. And then you're first in line when somebody retires.
That's true. And I'm also trying to keep an eye on all of our questions that might be coming in too, because I don't want to miss any questions from the people who are watching right now. Here's a quick one that I'll just throw in because Peter wanted to know, since you're from Boston,
Yes.
are you a Patriots fan or a Bills fan?
Oh, well, first of all, I'll tell you, I've lived in Buffalo longer than I've lived anywhere in my life. So once you've lived somewhere for 20 years, all right, you're from there. That's my declaration, right? So I'm Bills all the way. Go Bills.
All right. So we'll take you as a Bills fan. So we talked about potential cuts when it comes to this fiscal situation. How about taxes? Because that's something else that homeowners always want to know. What is going to happen to my property taxes when we see a change in leadership? What are you thinking? Would you look to raise taxes to try to make up with this deficit?
Well, we're not going to raise anything until we understand what's going on. But I think that the problem here is really a question of equity, right? And fairness. And what happened in 2019 in our most recent assessment is, in 2019 was the first reassessment that we had in 20 years. And there are communities here that have been, they've been well appreciated, they've been well valued for many, many years. The Elmwood Village, North Buffalo, all of those communities, even in the South Buffalo, very stable communities, very reliable in terms of valuation. And then there were other communities on the east side and the west side that were undervalued for many, many years. And very dramatically over the last 20 years, they increased in value. So when we were reconfiguring the numbers and the overall tax levy, right, we cut the tax rate in half. Well, if your valuation on the west side, and my daughter's mom had a house that we bought in 2012 for $20,000, it's now worth $500,000, right? Over on Hoyt Street, right by Buff State. You can see that even though you cut the tax rate in half, her taxes are going to go up dramatically because her valuation has increased tenfold. So, but you compare that to what's going on Middlesex and Lincoln Parkway and Elmwood and Highland and Lancaster and Linwood. Those communities have been very stable. So even though when they cut the tax rate in half, even if their valuation went up 30%, they got a tax decrease. Here's the thing. I think people are resentful when they go to write a tax check, all right, twice a year, and they feel like they're not getting anything in return. And I think that that's a lot of the backlash that we're feeling when we go and we talk about tax increases. They drive down streets and they're having to pay hundreds of dollars because their car and vehicle maintenance because of potholes. They're getting beat up by parking tickets because we've increased penalties and fines, and yet we aren't preventative and aggressive and proactive with how we care for our streets, on how we direct resources to our communities, how we educate our young people, how we address nuisance crime. So people feel like, what am I getting for this investment every year? So if we can turn the tables on that and say, let's do our jobs better. Let's care for our communities. Let's take care of people. Let's invest in young people and seniors, the bookends of our communities, right? Let's bring more resources in a creative way to connect the dots. Then all of a sudden, people feel like they're cared for, and they're more likely to tolerate those small, right, increases, 1% to 2% every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. I want to bring in Sherry's comment here. She thinks that there's an issue with psychiatric facilities that have been dissolved, including possible schools for troubled kids, hospitals for adults. We need to hire psychologists, pay them, try to take the weight off police and firefighters who aren't quite qualified to handle mental health conditions. So maybe that becomes kind of a concept of policing. And what are your thoughts on that? Maybe that also speaks to the concept of bringing in other resources.
Exactly. So back in 2011, I did a little tour through the Northeast. I went up to Michigan, through Toronto and Kitchener and London, Ontario, and into Flint, Michigan, and Detroit, and then back to Buffalo through Cleveland. And I was really trying to, just because I'm a type of person that's always thinking about better ways to do things. I'm a Libra, so I'm all about equity and fairness. And I see gross inequities in our communities, right? And it really weighs heavily on me. I mean, it's a big part of the reason why I'm running for mayor, because I just see us over and over making the same mistakes. And I see solutions, and I see best practices other places, and I know it can be done. In Kitchener, they put social workers with backpacks on the streets, right? where they can build relationships with people, where they can direct people, where they can anticipate when something is about to run or reel out of control. And then they can intervene before anybody has to call 911. You know, we've seen that in our own history. You know, I had a relationship. They used to, some people that live on the streets here in Buffalo that I knew and would interact with on the street. And I would know when Joan, a woman that used to frequent Elmwood Avenue, when she was off.
Right.
Because on good days, right, she would say hi to you, she'd engage with you, she'd talk about her family in Fort Erie. But on bad days, she'd yell and scream at you, right? That's the opportunity for us as social workers,
Right.
you know, and I have a background in social work as well and youth mentoring, to intervene and find out maybe she's doesn't have access to her meds, maybe she doesn't have a safe place, maybe she was abused, and to direct those people to the services where they can get the support and help they need, so that we don't have to call 911, so that police aren't burdened by that. You know, a first responder approach, right, that's focused on social services. And we don't have that. And because of that, you know, people say that it's worse than it's ever been. You know, homelessness downtown, right? Mental illness and homelessness on Allen Street.
Yep.
And the burden that puts on our businesses and our communities and our homeowners, and the perception that people have when they visit here.
Yeah. Well, let's also talk about what some businesses are seeing too, because you mentioned, you know, some of the crimes that are happening with businesses in different business districts. They've seen, you know, break-ins, they've seen vandalism. How about also the car thefts that we talk about all the time? We know in the city of Buffalo, that's become a huge problem. Yes, in the outlying suburbs as well. But we had James Garner on the show earlier this week, and he mentioned when it comes to these car thefts, because they have had such a huge impact. Right now, the policy in Buffalo is police officers don't chase a stolen car. That's police policy right now. He says he would work to change that and allow officers to chase a stolen car in the city of Buffalo. Would you do that? What are your thoughts on car chases in Buffalo when it comes to these stolen cars?
Well, I think that I take issue with that strategy, and I'll tell you why. Because as soon as you're in a position of chasing someone in a high density urban environment, right? You know, I was a first responder for years too. I worked as a paramedic in the wilderness in Maine. And the first rule of a first responder is you do no harm. When you are in a high speed chase, all right, chasing someone, you're in a position to create more harm. And we saw that, right? We've seen that where, you know, we just paid out, you know, we went to the bond market last fall, $43 million for a woman that was hit by a police officer that was going too fast down Main Street, lost control, and now she's paralyzed for the rest of her life. And that one settlement, all right, is costing the city of Buffalo $750,000 a month for the next 5 years. Now, that's not to demonize a police officer, but what it is used to do is illustrate that when you have people traveling at a high rate of speed and high speed police chases, you put other lives at risk. And, you know, I know paramedics. These are people, right, that have someone coding in the back of their ambulance, and they're not allowed to go over 10 miles over the speed limit. And it's because of that exact thing. We want to support a culture of care. All right, we want to take care of people. We don't want to put people in line for unnecessary harm. And that needs to permeate through everything that we do. And it has to be the dominant guiding force in our administration and in my administration. Okay. You know, and I think that that's something we got to come back to. It seems like that by addressing that small problem that you're making a fix, but you're not. All of these things, all of these problems are interconnected. Why do we have people stealing cars? That's the question I'm asking, right? What leads a young person or any person to steal a car, right? Economic insecurity, the lack of a job or an opportunity. We're going to create jobs and opportunities. We're going to build the capacity of our workforce. We're going to give young people a place to connect in their communities, a place where there's safe spaces, where they can be around positive mentors. That's a culture of care.
So you would not change that policy?
I would not.
And you think it starts at the root?
Yeah.
Can you change when you have 14, 15, 16-year-olds who have been in this situation? And we know a lot of the times these are the teenagers who are committing these crimes. Okay, we see this over and over again. Can you change that?
Yes, you can.
And how
You
do
can
do it?
change it by modeling. You can change it by people taking responsibility for their communities. I had the honor of being part of a coalition of men that assembled at MLK Park last Saturday. Predominantly African-American men from the neighborhood that were coming together proactively to address these exact issues, to say, how do we address economic inequality? How do we address racial inequality? How do we support ourselves as community members? How do we give support and mentoring to young people? Now, we have great organizations, Stop the Violence Coalition and SNUG. These are organizations that have been preventing and intervening in the lives of young people and getting and redirecting them to positive opportunities at Northland, at ECC, at union apprenticeship programs. But our young people need our unwavering support. They need to know that they have a place. They need to know that people care. They need to know that their mayor is going to stand up for them and not just send them off to prison or to the holding center or slap their fingers, but to give them an opportunity where right now they don't feel they have one.
And what kind of opportunities, I know that's something that you talked about on one of your platforms, what kind of opportunities would you like to see for younger people in our communities?
Well, I'll tell you this, I said it once and I'll say it again, we're gonna direct as much resources as we can to community centers and senior centers. All right, because seniors have assets and wisdom that they can share with young people. We have a lot of young people and talent in our community that would like to mentor and tutor and be supportive, but they need a space to do that. They need to be invited in. You know, I'm reminded of the Extreme Makeover Home Edition back in 2009, 2010. You remember that?
I remember.
And they put out a call, and what did they get? 5,000 volunteers from across the region that emerged to transform not just that property, but the whole street along Massachusetts Avenue. They fixed porches and painted houses and put new roofs on and built parks, all in 1 week's time. Like, if we have a vision or a leader that's inviting people to participate and we create opportunities and spaces and places for people to plug in, they will, but they need to be invited. And we need to create the space. If you build it, they'll come.
Okay. I want to bring in Elizabeth's question too, because I want to make sure that your questions and your voice is heard when we talk about the possible changes here in the city. Elizabeth says she's concerned because she sees people hiding in overgrown bushes, people doing drugs. What is your plan with abandoned properties that she sees in the city are becoming hazards?
Right. Yeah. And it's a problem, and it's been a problem for years. Abandoned and vacant homes, vacant lots where there's illegal dumping, you know, neighborhoods that have been neglected. And I think that, again, I come back to that culture of care, but also, you know, directing our different departments. I said some departments are understaffed and under-resourced. The Permits and Inspections Department is one of them, right? Where we haven't been aggressive in our policy and enforcement of absentee landlords, of properties that are vacant, long-term landowners that don't invest in those properties. I live on Northampton Street, or I've been living and running businesses on Northampton on the east side of Buffalo for the last 20 years. And I will tell you that there are 10 properties from my home to Main Street that have been vacant for the last 15 to 20 years. 2 decades. They pay their taxes, they minimally maintain the property, they do nothing to invest in that property. And we have a housing shortage because of it, right? There are people that, if they have the resources and the tools, but we cannot allow our Office of Permits and Inspections to have long-term vacancies in our community, right? Eventually, somebody's going to, because of the social service needs in our communities, someone's going to break into that house. And then maybe they're going to start a fire in there to stay warm in the middle of the winter. And then they're going to put other people's lives at risk. And what we need to see is resource investment and commitment to turning those properties around.
Well, and something that you mentioned that I was reading about is an interesting view for vacant lots that I hadn't really heard about before when we talk about investing in community agriculture.
Yes.
So explain that to everybody, because that seems like something, like, I haven't heard a lot about that.
Well, again, my inspiration is the work that we did during Buffalo Reuse, but also my visit to Detroit, where in the city of Detroit, there are 4,000 community gardens. And of those 4,000, a quarter of them are are producing produce and selling back to the community.
So your concept is, let's take some of these vacant lots and do that.
Right. I mean, I have a bunch of concepts. I want to do creative infill housing. I want to work with UB Architecture Design to actually create a nationwide design competition for affordable, green, efficient homes that can be infill, that fit with the neighborhood, that can be more affordable. I want to see us have the largest urban nursery. My vision is to actually plant 100,000 trees in the city of Buffalo in the next 10 years, using young people from our new initiative, City Action Corps, to reforest our city, to plant trees along our commercial strips. And then, yes, go visit Groundworks Market Garden over at Leslie and Genesee Street on any Tuesday night and see what they've done to transform a massive plot of city land into production agriculture, where they're selling, they're creating jobs, they're supporting people. So yes, we're addressing many, many things at one time. We're addressing vacant land that's a burden and a blight on our community. We're creating jobs. We're addressing food insecurity. We're building value with what we have right here in front of us. In my role as the next mayor, and my role and the role of my administration is to open doors for those ideas, to help make those things happen more efficiently, more safely.
Okay. So we are going to pause in just 1 minute because we are going to let Aaron comes in and he does the weather right over here. And if
Great.
you join us on Second Cup, you know how that works. And then after that, because we only will have a minute or two, I'm going to ask you about the picnic basket that you brought in. So maybe you can show everybody what you brought in here. And we're going to talk about this because I've been interested in the prop since you walked in with it. So we're going to pause, Cuppies, and Aaron's going to come in and give us the forecast, a bit of a rainy forecast still, but not nearly as bad as yesterday. So he's coming in. We're going to pause for that. You'll be able to hear that forecast. And then if you have any final questions, please put them in right now, and we'll be able to address them right after.
Do we get to hear the weather or no?
All right, good morning, everyone. We are looking right now at the 290 by the Blue Water Tower. No problems getting through there right now. It's had some heavier volume earlier. Things have kind of thinned out, and really no issues on the main roads. We take a look at the radar, and we have some showers rolling through the metro area and some steadier showers across Wyoming County. Some light rain right now here in Buffalo. Roads are a little damp. Some heavier rain from East Aurora over towards Sheldon, Java, and near Attica along Route 20A. You're getting some rain. Then we head south. Shower activity across the southern tier, especially along Interstate 86 from Sherman over toward Jamestown. This is where the bulk of the rain is going to be coming in off of Lake Erie. We'll also have the chance for water spouts today through tomorrow and even into Friday. Lake Erie at 61, Ontario at 60 degrees, both lakes well above normal. The colder air over the lakes could produce some water spouts. So something to just keep an eye on if you're checking out over the lakes. 47 degrees right now, winds out of the west at 10 miles per hour. So it feels like it's 42. 45 in Dunkirk, 45 right now in Niagara Falls. Temperatures in the mid-40s right now with scattered showers, low 50s this afternoon. Scattered showers and lake effect rain south of Buffalo. We'll have some rain make its way through the metro area at times, especially into this afternoon. More scattered showers on Friday. Some showers will linger into early Saturday along the Lake Erie and Lake Ontario shorelines. Otherwise, we'll start to see some drier air move in. As far as rain amounts, on top of what we already have, could see another inch or so of rain from Jamestown over toward Ellicottville today through tomorrow. Your forecast for today, mostly cloudy, scattered showers, some lake effect rain south of Buffalo with a high of 52. Tonight, overnight lows near 40, mostly cloudy and cool with scattered showers. Tomorrow near 50 with scattered showers. Near 50 for Saturday, low 50s Sunday and Monday. Looking nice for Tuesday and Wednesday with partly to mostly sunny skies. And then things change for the end of next week as we are expecting some cooler air to come in toward the end of October.
All right. Aaron, thank you very much. One thing I do want to address really quickly, because Kathy was asking why you are sitting with me, yet a Republican candidate who came in the other day stood at the counter. Kathy, one simple reason, it was because we had two anchors there, and so we only have two chairs. And if we would have sat him in a chair, unfortunately, the desk is so tall that he would have been down here. So nothing beyond that. I promise it's just a seating versus standing thing to make everybody kind of the same height. Just wanted to address that for you. There's a couple things here that are coming up, and really we go till 8:30, but we'll take a couple extra minutes. A number of people are saying the biggest issue they have when it comes to stolen cars and the concept of like, yes, let's empower these teens, let's give them places. I think there's a concern coming from people about what happens with the parents and the families.
Right.
Is that something that needs to be further addressed? Do you think that we're doing enough to address that? Should there be penalties for families, for parents, if their kids are doing things like this?
I don't think that you lead with the stick. You know, I don't think that parents respond to punitive penalties, just like I don't think kids respond well to that. I think people want to feel connected. They want to feel like there are people, and I think that are looking after them, that are caring for them, that are supporting them. And it really is the culture and value and priority of my administration. It's why I carry around this picnic basket.
Okay, so tell us about the basket.
So it's a metaphor for me. And I have some volunteers, some amazing volunteers that spend hours and hours and hours. I spent some time in the home of one of them yesterday baking cookies. So this basket is filled, and these are yours.
Oh, thank
with
you.
home-baked cookies that were crafted by volunteers that embrace this culture of care that I'm talking about. And I carry this around because it conveys for me, and it's a symbolic of the ethos that I think that we need to embrace in leadership, in politics, and in our communities. And, you know, I was on a street over on Dana Road just about a week ago with the volunteer actually that did this baking, and we were talking to residents there and putting some signs up. And you know, she stepped in front of a few boys that were on their bicycles, and two of them weren't wearing helmets, right? And she was like, "You guys should be wearing helmets," right? And she wasn't their parent, she wasn't their aunt or uncle, she was just someone in the neighborhood, right, that was taking ownership for other young people. And I think that I have to model that as the next leader. You know, we have infinite division in our community right now. We see it every day in our politics, in our communities, in the way that we talk about issues. And I think that we need to talk about the politics of possibilities, how we bring people together, how we care for one another, how we check in on one another, how we direct people to resources when they know they're in danger of domestic violence, how we support and mentor a young person when we know that they're a good kid, but they just need an opportunity. And so many of our kids are good kids. Like, we're not born bad kids. We're born into a culture and a community and an environment that doesn't keep young people safe. And as soon as we change that ethos and those values, then all of these other negative outcomes that we're seeing in our communities are going to drift away. And it's not pie in the sky. It's not dream thinking. It's just coming back to the values of care, personal responsibility, and holding people accountable. And I'm going to do that as the leader with my department heads, and I'm going to do that in my individual communities with the people that I care about. And I think that's I think the way that we lead our community forward.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for joining us and making time to join us on Second Cup today.
course.
Michael Gaynor, running on the Restore Buffalo party line. Of course, Election Day next Tuesday. Early voting starts this Saturday, and I know you have a debate right now that you're going to.
9:30, and we are the last on the list on the ballot. I am the very last on the list. They saved the best for last. You don't have to vote for a Democrat or a Republican. You can vote independent. We can bring everybody to the table. Michael Gaynor for mayor.com.
Michael, thank you for joining us today and for answering all of our questions. We appreciate you joining us as well, everyone. Thanks. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 8.